Welcome to a calvinian architecture. Today I'm reading from the 6th octave. The keynote is La, the colour is indigo, and it's the first chapter. The city is Irene. And I'm reading verse 2. Story of a journey. Albert knew someone from Hammersley Iron, he said, and he managed to get us all an interview in Perth for a job up in Dampier. How would we get there? Drive, of course. Paul offered for the four of us, him, me, Hank, his brother, and Albert, to take turns driving across to Perth, and we all agreed cheerfully. It was 1969. There was no road across the Nullarbor then, only a dirt track with deep corrugations. Paul had a Beetle, a light green Beetle with rounded mini bull bars, more like rabbit bars, and stiff seats. He had it serviced, and he bought a canvas water bag, which he tied to the rabbit bars. Just in case, he said. In case of what, I wondered. We set off one November afternoon after Chris made us some lunch. Beef tornadoes, if I remember. We set off just like that. We filled the tank on Ballarat Road and proceeded to Ballarat and beyond, Avoca and beyond, Mount Gambier and beyond, to Adelaide. It seemed so close when you considered our final destination, and yet it was such a long way off. The four of us, all large men except me, jammed into the Beetle, water bag filled and ready for whatever it was that Paul had foreseen. I don't remember much of the trip except waking up as we descended into Adelaide from the hills above, and the city lay before us like a twinkling carpet. Then on to Port Lincoln, beyond that, Ceduna. We just kept going, and soon enough it felt like we'd never done anything else in our lives except drive. Except be jammed up like that, the four of us, looking on to a moving flatness. One late evening, and must have been the second one, we stopped on the red dirt track. One of us must have had to relieve himself. The light was so very strange on my skin, and then the silence, the absolute seeming emptiness descended upon us in a deafening roar, faint at first, like a distant humming, and progressively louder, until we had to get back into the car in a terrified silence and drive like hell, as far away from that primal scream as we could get. We didn't say anything about it, and I don't think we have to this day. We didn't have the words then, and we probably have them even less now. We got into Perth a few days later and stayed at the Cloisters, a little rooming house right in the centre of the city. We went to Scarborough and to the races at Ascot. Albert was a great racing fan and a self-proclaimed expert, but we lost all the little money we had. The last few days before the interview, we lived on watermelons and bananas and played soccer in Kings Park, looking down onto the city. We finally managed to get some work, Albert and me, in Dampier, in the palletising plant, and Paul and Henk at Tom Price in the mines. It was sad to part, but we had a job, didn't we? We all had dreams that we wanted to manifest. I can't remember any of the dreams the others had, but mine was all-consuming. I wanted to save enough money to get to Japan, or even get a free passage there on Hammersley iron ore boats, in order to see Ryoan-ji, Zen garden in Kyoto. 15 stones arranged in a space consisting solely of raked sand. I'd constantly dream about this garden, dream about it, moving through it, looking onto it, taking care of it. What happened, though, wasn't part of the dream. The very first day in Dampier, I got so badly sunburnt that I spent the next week shivering in my freezing air-conditioned room. My face covered with some kind of cream. The pay was so poor after board and food was taken out, and after supplementing the meagre Hammersley diet with dates and bananas from the supermarket, that I managed, after 2 months, to save only the bus fare back to Melbourne. I got a lift to Perth on the back of a ute, which I shared with a crazy blue heeler cross. The driver charged down the unmade road to Perth on a full moon night, seemingly aiming for any huge-sized rocks that was strewn on its silvery surface. We had to change tyres about 6 times during the trip. Whilst this was being done, I'd wander off each time a little way from the cursing driver and his pal into the landscape, lit up as though a headlight was shining down from the sky. It seemed to me then that though I had managed to get to Japan, I was still looking onto a Ryoanji garden, only bigger, with rocks randomly perfectly placed within a big sand garden. We finally got into Perth at dawn and I was dropped off at Midland Railway Station so that I could get the bus back to Melbourne. Well, I haven't managed to get to the rock garden at Ryoanji yet. I figure I'm not ready for it. Somehow more preparations need to be made before I could contain any of it. The sand, the sky. But I still dream about it, about the rocks mostly. Sometimes the rocks I see in dreams are the ones I saw in the desert between Dampier and Perth. Sometimes they're interspersed with the 15 rocks at Ryoanji. You know, I don't think I could really honestly tell the difference any longer if I saw any of them together in real life. Originally, the garden had 9 rocks back in the 12th century, and somehow no one quite knows when they expanded to 15. There's no history of that. That's as much a mystery as any of it that I still think about. Sometimes the road from Melbourne to Mildura has that kind of quality. No rocks, but trees. Like a big garden that someone's arranged. And when I get to Oyen, I begin to breathe again on the way back to Mildura. The garden seems to have expanded to include all of the national park, Hatter Lakes, and all those trees. Seem like they've been placed there by a very experienced artist. Until tomorrow, 6th octave, 2nd chapter, Arja. Until then.